What happens when we die? Honestly, it's literally the ultimate human question, right? It's the one great mystery that binds every single one of us together, no matter where we're from or what we believe. Today, we're not just looking at the cold, hard biology of dying. We're diving deep into how human beings across time and across entirely different cultures have answered this profound question and how they actually find meaning in the face of mortality.
So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something really fascinating. We are going to synthesize some incredibly diverse religious and secular perspectives into a cohesive, structured summary. We'll explore exactly how different traditions step in to give us structure, hope, and meaning at the end of life.
All right, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the universal experience of death, move through linear concepts like resurrection and judgment, and then we'll explore cyclical views, things like karma and liberation. After that, we'll look at the earthly ties of ancestors and community, the sheer power of mourning rituals, and finally, how grief is totally transforming in our modern digital world.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the universal experience of death. This is where we hit the absolute boundary of biological life.
Look, we all know death is an absolute biological certainty, but for us, for human beings, it is almost never just a biological event. The profound shock of mortality touches on intense, heavy questions of meaning, relationship, guilt, and hope. By definition, death is the end of biological life, sure, but it's interpreted in vastly different ways across religious, philosophical, and social contexts. And this is exactly where religions step in. They provide the narratives, the rituals, and the framework to help us process something that otherwise seems completely incomprehensible.
Moving on to Section 2, afterlife, resurrection, and judgment. We're looking at the linear perspective here, specifically in Islam and Christianity. Think of the timeline of existence here not as a repeating circle, but as a straight line, where death is just a transition into a brand new reality. Both Islam and Christianity share a remarkably similar architecture when it comes to the afterlife. In Islam, the afterlife is called akhirah, which parallels eternal life in Christianity. The concept of paradise, or that ultimate closeness to God, is Jannah in Islam and heaven in Christianity. And for that actual transition into eternity, Islam speaks of an intermediate state called barzakh, while Christianity really emphasizes resurrection. In both faiths, you see this very clear continuation of the individual's story. Your personal identity is absolutely preserved beyond the grave.
Now here's the crucial part. It's not just about what happens next, it's about why that matters right now. Concepts like judgment often get a bad rap. They're misunderstood as mere fear tactics. But in these traditions, judgment is ultimately about justice and accountability. It means no good deed and no unfair suffering goes unnoticed. And importantly, this justice is deeply balanced by divine compassion. God's mercy is right at the center. Whether it's the Islamic focus on Tawheed, the absolute oneness of God, or the Christian salvation history, this linear view places a massive responsibility on how we actually live our lives in the here and now.
Section 3, Karma, the Cycle, and Liberation. We are now stepping into the cyclical worlds of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism.
So if the Abrahamic traditions see time as a straight line, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism view it as a vast, ongoing wheel of cause and effect. To wrap our heads around this wheel, we have to understand samsara, the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Now, for someone raised with a linear perspective, the idea of rebirth might actually sound kind of nice, right? Like a comforting promise of a second chance. But in these traditions, samsara is actually seen as a form of bondage. It is the continuous, exhausting repetition of suffering and attachment. So the ultimate goal isn't to just keep being reborn forever, it's to escape the cycle entirely.
But how do you escape that cycle? Well, different traditions approach it in completely distinct ways. Take the Hindu concept of moksha. This is the ultimate liberation of an eternal, unchanging soul, known as the Atman, breaking free from the cycle of rebirths. But the Buddhist concept of nirvana, it's fundamentally different. That's because Buddhism generally teaches anatta, which means non-self. So nirvana isn't the liberation of some eternal soul. Instead, it's the extinguishing of the very illusions, greed, and attachments that cause the cycle to keep spinning in the first place. So you have two completely distinct paths, but they're aiming to transcend the exact same wheel.
Now, let's look at how this builds in a tradition you might be a little less familiar with, Jainism. This is wild. Here, karma isn't just some abstract law of cause and effect. It is actually seen as subtle, physical matter that literally sticks to the soul and weighs it down. So, to achieve moksha, or liberation, you have to practice radical nonviolence, which is known as ahimsa. Because every single action, even accidentally harming the smallest insect, attracts more of that sticky karmic matter. This tradition views the careful, completely nonviolent navigation of life and death as absolutely essential for freeing the soul.
All right, Section 4, Ancestors, Community, and Memory. We're shifting our focus back to Earth, to the power of the here and now in Judaism and indigenous traditions.
When we dive into Judaism and indigenous traditions, we find this incredibly profound emphasis on the living community and the enduring legacy of the people who have departed. Just look at the Jewish mourning structure. It brilliantly uses time to carefully guide people through grief. You start with Shiva, which is an intense week of community support right after the burial. Then there's the Kaddish prayer and the Yahrzeit, which is the annual day of remembrance. Indigenous traditions similarly prioritize the collective, but often with a deep spatial and spiritual connection to the land itself. The ancestors aren't just gone, they remain an active part of the cosmology, kept alive through oral traditions. In both of these cases, the intense focus is on righteous living and maintaining relationships right here, right now, rather than endlessly speculating about the precise mechanics of the afterlife.
Section 5. The sheer power of mourning rituals. How we transform chaos into order.
Because, let's face it, no matter what a culture actually believes about the afterlife, every single human society relies on rituals to process the intense biological shock of loss. As our sources beautifully put it, these rituals bring a totally chaotic experience into a comprehensible order. Think about it. Death completely shatters our reality. When words completely fail us, rituals give us a script. Whether it's an Islamic janazah, a Jewish shiva, or even a completely secular eulogy with old photos and a favorite song, these actions tell us what to do with our hands, where to stand, and who to lean on when everything else feels totally out of control.
So how does that actually work in practice? Well, rituals generally follow a really clear three-part script. Step 1 marks the transition. This might be a ritual washing or a viewing of the body, basically making the new reality of death tangible. Step 2 is the communal action. Through prayer, singing, or honestly just lighting candles together, the community steps in to say, hey, you are not alone. And Step 3 involves a structured, gradual return to everyday life, usually marked by memorial days and recognized phases of grief. It is honestly a brilliant psychological and social framework that takes this abstract, overwhelming pain and translates it into visible, supportive actions.
Which brings us to our final section, number 6, Grief in the Modern World. We are talking secularization and digital memory. Pluralism, shifting religious affiliations, and let's be real, technology are rapidly flipping the script on how we say goodbye. Traditional mourning has always been rooted in fixed religious rituals, tied to physical locations like cemeteries, and guided by clear authorities. But today, we're shifting heavily toward digital memory. We have individualized online profiles, AI-supported remembrance that can actually mimic voices, and this constant, persistent digital presence. The cemetery is no longer just a physical place you visit once a year. It's right there in your pocket, popping up in your social media feed.
And this digital shift, it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. We are witnessing the total individualization of funerals, where people literally curate their own final ceremonies. We're also seeing huge pluralization. Families today often blend multiple worldviews and religions, meaning a single standard ritual just doesn't work for everyone anymore. Add to this the super vital role of palliative and spiritual care in hospitals that have to navigate all these diverse needs, plus the completely new ethical questions being raised by AI and social media. Hospitals, schools, and families are just constantly having to navigate this complex kaleidoscope of modern needs.
So this leaves us with a pretty heavy but fascinating final question. Who actually owns your digital footprints after you die? And perhaps even more importantly for our own emotional well-being, when does having a constant digital memory help us heal, and when does it actually prevent us from finally letting go? As we've seen today, human beings have spent millennia using religion, community, and ritual to process the end of life. Now, as our tools for memory become immortalized in the cloud, we really have to ask ourselves how we want to be remembered, and how we can still find a way to truly say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it sparks some curiosity and gave you a brand new lens to view these timeless human questions.